think about this film? Pretty amazing, no? We have quite a surprise for you tonight. I think many of you know that Director Alvarez and Dr. Zimbardo are here tonight, but we also have a ton of the cast who decided to show up. So first I'm going to introduce the man who helmed this movie magnificently, Mr. Alvarez.
It's super weird to be in here.
It is.
It's such a big deal.
And then I believe he's somewhere sitting in the audience. Dr. Zimbardo, are you here?
Oh, he's right here.
Oh, please, come join us. And while the good doctor makes his way here, I'm going to just run off all these cast members because it's quite remarkable. It's a pretty special night. From the cast, Thomas Mann, Logan Miller, Sheffield, Davern, Gaius, Gilchrist, and Keir, Callan McAuliffe. These people just showing up.
Logan, took your seat.
So, wonderful to meet you, sir. The seat's for you if you'd like it. My first question is actually is for you. Is
We got Tim Talbott here too.
oh, it's screenwriter Tim Talbott. I'm so sorry.
It's like a festival screen.
It is. I believe you go by Dr. Z. Is that correct?
What?
You go by Dr. Z.
Z, yeah.
Here. Thank you. So, question for you. I mean, this happened over 4 years ago, and became, very well known pretty soon thereafter. How many times have you been approached about making a movie about this, or television series, or anything sort of in a different form of media?
No, I'm so happy to be here, so happy to see this in reality, because this has been going on for 35 years. Different producers, different scriptwriters, different actors. This is going to be a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and his buddy.
Benicio
del Toro. This is going to be a movie written by Sterling Silverfan, who did Here Tonight. So it's endless scripts, endless producers, and it just never materialized until Brent Emery 13 years ago said, we're going to make this movie. And we finally rounded out set of one producer that we saw. And we started really 3 years ago, and production started a year ago.
We shot it in October, so it was really recent.
It's been under a year.
Yeah, 10 months, probably in 9 months between pre-production and release or so, 10 months.
So I want to ask the cast quickly, and I know we only have a number of mics, so we'll try to spread it out really quick. Is what was this production like? Playing real life people, and were you concerned at all about watching the videotapes and stuff on YouTube and stuff to try to be as realistic as possible, or were you more concerned about just sticking sort of the script and Kyle's direction?
Hello, hi. I have the microphone now. My name's Callan McAuliffe. I play the guy with the offensively long ponytail. Main character by any means, but this was an extraordinary experience. Again, I'm quite a spontaneous actor, so a lot of these guys may be able to speak more to this than I myself can, but I was kind of afraid to watch too much of the original material for fear of being horrified. But I think a lot of it was in the script. And of course, being as extensively researched as it was, we didn't need, or I didn't need much more. I got as much as I could from that. But it certainly was a powerful experience, just embodying a character like that. Because I like to think I'm not that much of an asshole. But someone else, please speak.
I'll jump in. I definitely read and watched everything that I could, and that was because Tom had such a specific point of view, and everything that he said was very personal. and very interesting. And so Kyle and I spoke a few times, especially over emails, over where that point of view came from.
And for the record, like a lot of what, especially a lot of what Chris goes through is nearly verbatim. Like the bastard sequence really happened, the push-ups with the guy sitting on his back, all that stuff was really, really accurate. So
yeah. And so every piece of information that was given to me was just a gift. I mean, one of the things was, I think, an interview about Tom with his parole, and he never actually even signed up for parole because he felt everyone else needed it before he did, which to me was so fascinating.
What about anyone else?
Hey, I'm Gaius Charles, played. For me, it was actually really cool because I think, as you know, playing one of the characters who actually helped to conduct the experiment, watching the tapes, doing the research, having so much content to go through was extraordinarily helpful. The character was originally written, the script I got, the real person's name was Dr. W. Curtis Banks, and Dr. Zimbardo will tell you a lot about him. But I was really just overjoyed to play him because he's a guy who was very accomplished. He was, from what I understand, the first African American to receive his PhD from the Stanford psychology department. He went off and was the first African American psychology professor to be tenured at Princeton. Did a lot of research, a lot of work on African American psychology, and just contributed to that world extraordinarily. So for me, it was really inspiring to be able to go and breathe life into a storyline that otherwise might be lost, and then put it in the context of the experiment and what really happened. It was great to have the research.
Well, Kyle, I wanted to ask you, what were the challenges when you came onto this film, besides the fact that it had a huge cast, would have a huge cast if you're going to accurately depict it, and the idea that, we did an interview, you talked about it's a bunch of white guys in a hallway for 6 days.
And one Chinese.
yeah,
Sorry. And so
there's a punchline. There's a guy walks into a bar. No, we jokingly when we were shooting the movie, we were like, oh, this is like white. It was white people in a white room in the movie. When we were shooting in the hallway. And then we pushed that even further with costume production design to make sure that we had a whole, you kind of design a color palette and you actually literally lay out color palettes. And for the whole movie it was quite large, but then we had a separate one for the hallway that was somewhere between off-white and slightly green. And it was nothing outside of that. And so you have to, when you're limited in the hallway, you have to understand it was 6 foot wide and not very long. And we rebuilt, if you go to the basement of Stanford University right now, it looks exactly the same. And so it was the challenge of the confined space and the lack of color. And the lack of color we just embraced. Josh Shelton, the VP, and I just were like, okay, the more we actually use, so many people talk about the 70s look of the movie. We shot the movie on digital. The 70s look really, so much of a look of a film, and I learned on this more than anything comes more from the color, from the costuming and the production design than it does even the lens you're using, the camera you're using. But we did use vintage lenses, but part of it was about trying to, when the movie starts, you see both sides, you always see the space of the hallway early on. There's deliberately the camera's moving over the set, the geography, we were obsessed with making sure the geography was very clear, the takes are longer. And then as the movie goes on, obviously it ends so tightly that you lose a sense of how small or big or this space really was or what the relationships really were. And that was our way of hopefully the set evolving as the perception of the prisoners of it evolved into it feeling like a real prison. And also hopefully making the movie feel fresh when you're in the same white space for 2 hours.
And Dr. Zimbardo, I guess that was a question for you. You guys originally did the experiment. Was the idea to make it such a small space because you thought it might incite more different behavior, or was that just all you had?
It was all we had. It was a basement in the Stanford psychology department. We're actually graduate student offices, but it was summer, and so we just kicked them out. But it's all it was. We should mention that only 2 of all the participants were Stanford students. It seems like more, several people mentioned Stanford. So these are kids who are in the Bay Area finishing up summer school at Stanford, at Berkeley, and other places. And I knew that in those days, college didn't begin until after Labor Day. So everybody had 2 weeks free, and everybody needed $15, which is a lot of money, except the prisoners lived there 24/7 for $15. So it's not even $1 an hour. So it was a good deal for the guards, not a good deal for the prisoners.
And for the cast, I was just curious, what was it like? How many days did you guys shoot? Kind of like
23, which I know for like, obviously this is in LA, like people like, it was a hard shoot. And it's 23 is like relatively common for an indie movie, but not an indie movie that's 130 pages and has 25 leads working every day and a bunch of 70s. It was, in other words, working with these guys was fun. Shooting 15 pages a day wasn't.
So I guess. I wanted to ask you guys, just because so many of you had so many different experiences in Hollywood on TV shows, movies, etc. Like sometimes you're in sets and right in front of this huge open space and it's not claustrophobic. And I'm just sort of curious, what was this like, working for 3 straight weeks?
I just want to say that for a movie that's very disturbing, we actually had a lot of fun on set.
Oh yeah?
Probably too much fun, yeah. Yeah, every time we would do the push-ups and the jumping jacks and, being verbally abused, and in between days, I was just like, hey man, we're shooting a movie, man. This is great. I'm so much fun with you guys.
It's actually inappropriate how many takes we ruin from laughing.
Well, I think
the subject matter.
I think instinctually, we all knew that we had to do that in order to get through the shoot, just because this whole experience is disturbing. It is tough. It is tough mentally and physically, And so I think instinctually we knew that we had to do that to get through it. And I'm glad we did, because I got to know all these guys, and we actually worked really well, and we had a really good time.
Things would get straining though every once in a while. Like when we were dealing with all of Chris's content, and then dealing with all of the exercises and stuff, like none of these chains were fake at all. Like we were all actually wearing metal chains, doing all this stuff.
Jumping jacks.
We're doing these jumping jacks, take after take after take, and like I go home and there's this giant bruise on my foot. I call it and I'm calling the spiritual right now. This is bullshit. But no, it was a great time. So really good time.
And then some of you guys, when you auditioned for the movie, how many of you knew you were auditioning for a guard role, and how many for a prisoner, or could it have gone either way?
I think that was one of the scariest things. Getting the audition email in, and it just says prisoner. And you're like, really not even, as an actor, that's the scariest thing, like not even a name anymore. And then you read the script, and it wasn't like
ugly ass prisoner.
Right. That's okay. But then you read the script and you realize that it doesn't really matter which role you get. They're all equally amazing. Everyone gets a great amount of screen time and get to do amazing things in the film. So.
But the auditions were, you could, in some cases, it was different for everybody, in some cases people I've been more familiar with or not, but there was sort of the thing of like you could take prisoners regarding sides, like you could come in and do both, or you could do one, and in some cases I would put someone because they did that, or sometimes I would put them in a prisoner because they chose a guard. It just changed. Each person was different. You're just trying to figure out what the balance will be and who their scenes will be. It was like the best movie in the world to cast. That's why I wanted to do it, because it was like you're never going to have a chance to make like what was a pretty small indie film with 25 leads in it.
Well, before I follow up on that, then, before we take some questions from the audience, I know you have tons of them. Did any of you play a guard or a prisoner and wish you played the opposite?
I don't think I wish I played the opposite, but I was very surprised when I heard guard for myself, personally. And for me and Moises in the same guard shift was amazing. But yeah, it's
James, which is
it
makes up for you, both of you guys.
And then it was it was surprising, I guess, but yeah.
For me, I think the original audition was for prisoner, or no, I think guard actually, and I came in to read for Kyle, and then he asked if I could go out of the audition room and take 5 minutes to come back in doing the exact same scene, but as the prisoner. Well, yeah, that too. No, that too. But as the prisoner. And so then I came back in the room and started doing the exact same scene, but from the other point of view, and just couldn't remember any of the lines, and it was a real train wreck. But
I think you were like, man, I'm so sorry. But that's the thing. It's I don't know. The auditions is such a weird thing, and I always think the wrong thing is to look for I remember the first time I was casting a movie, and someone came in totally off book, and I was like, oh my god, they really want it. But then it doesn't. I mean, some people can be off book in a heartbeat, and other people can't, or whatever it might be. And especially when you ask someone to step out, and we did that a few times, and they come in, you're looking for the qualities that might fit. You're looking for the instincts that are right, or and in this case, I took into account much more so also the tenor the actual like personalities of the actors, because we didn't have the time, nor did I have the desire for it to be like this manipulative method run set. I mean, that's fine, I can do that, but when you have 25 people, a lot of these guys have known each other. I mean, these two have known each other since they were like 6 or 7, right?
No, not
Oh, we go way back.
Oh, 14?
the delivery room, wasn't it? Yeah, we did Super Soda commercials together. We got wet together, and now we're doing this. Texas. We got wet Texas together, and now we're here in Hollywood.
So you don't expect to go in and like break those bonds, or obviously like Ezra and Nick and Johnny having done Perks together, and Keehyung and Chris having done Maze Runner. You're not going to go in and be able to like fuck with that on the other side of the lines, and so you just actually embrace it. And that's why it was actually mostly really fun. I mean, the most quiet parts were Chris doing the push-ups and you singing Amazing Grace. Other than that, it was usually, and that was all in the same day too. And we shot all that final close-up stuff, and like it was supposed to be a day and a half, and it was the only time we got so far ahead of schedule, not because everyone was just really focused, and it was like the best shooting day I've ever had, because we just kept on going and going and going and going, and that was the one day where you're like, oh, there was so much of sets is figuring out bullshit and problems and union hours and all this kind of stuff, and that was one of those days where it actually really felt truly about work and only work.
Pretty awesome. Question? Oh, please go ahead, sir.
Ask Tim about his script. Tim Talbott won Best Screenwriting at Sundance. I just want to ask, what are the challenges in doing the script?
Well, the biggest challenge for me was just the fact that our approach, there have been other attempts at this project before, where they always tried to make the stakes higher than they actually were. Like, I always had to be like a death or a melodrama with like a guard whose best friend is a prisoner and they've got a girl on the outside. And it all, like, when I read Dr. Zimbardo's material, I was kind of fascinated, and I thought, well, this is the story we need to tell. And the only way I could figure to do that was to write everything that happened in those 6 days. And when you do that, you end up with a 260-page script. And so, over time we were able to get it down, and the really interesting thing for me was, in terms of the structure of the movie, paring it down revealed this really great kind of thing that you don't see in Hollywood movies a lot, which is when the protagonist of the movie shifts from different points in the movie. You come in with Ezra's character, and you're like, okay, he's the star of the movie, we're going to follow him, and then all of a sudden he's gone. You're like lost as an audience member and go, well, who are we supposed to root for? Oh, I guess it's 819. And then we follow him, and then he gets kicked out. And it gets all the way down to the point where we're with 2093, Chris's character, and when they finally break that guy, it's like there is no protagonist anymore. The protagonist is this process. And for me, as a writer, to have something from the truth reveal itself like that was really fascinating. And I didn't even, it didn't reveal itself to me until months after I'd written the first draft. So that's what I have to say.
Also, props for remembering those numbers.
All I know is the numbers because we ended up changing all the names, and I wasn't privy to that until I got to set. And so Kyle was calling all of you guys' names. I'm like, who are you talking about? Just give me a number. I can hold on to the number.
Questions? Right here.
Yes, I want to know if Dr. Zimbardo worked with Billy Crudup, if they worked together on the role, or did Billy just interpret it?
So the question was, did Billy Crudup work with you at all before he?
Yeah, I was on the set only 2 days. Not on the set for the Prison and Guards, because they shot that in Hensley and in Burbank in the studio.
Yeah.
And so I was on the set, and all the other scenes were shot in different places.
Downtown. What's the Herald Examiner building downtown? Where like everything gets shot. We were shooting. His apartment was in like the apartment from the Chandelier video, and like our video village was in the lineup room from Usual Suspects. Like literally everything was shot there.
So I worked with him on 2 days, and he was just right so totally into it. The only thing that was negative was that he's American and not Sicilian. And I tried to get him, I said, you gotta use your hands more. He couldn't do it, he did these little feeble gestures. But other than that, he was as good at me as I can imagine. And obviously much more handsome.
But if you do look at photos, and it was like only accidentally intentional, or however you want to say it, was that you at that time, you look at the photos, there really is like a stark resemblance, which is always nice.
Well, we had hair, everybody. Again, it's 1971. It's the era of hair. And so the reason we had nylon stocking caps was, we thought maybe we'd shave their head, and then, everybody would be normalistic. So, but as you can see, everybody had hair, and hair was a big thing, as well as the movie and the play.
Oh, I had a panic attack after when I was watching the footage after we shot the first day. We were about to go up the next day. We shot Freshville and Keir stripping Ezra down, and I saw the wig. I thought the head James's big hair, and I thought, oh fuck, like we need to go back. And then I went and just looked up photos, and I was like, oh wait a second, this is just everyone really just did I mean, it's hard because you watch the movie and you're watching the movie through a contemporary lens, so you kind of think like, oh no, but then you really look back and it really is how people looked. You just have to embrace it.
The most interesting thing is 8612, who broke down in 36 hours, he couldn't believe that he lost control of himself. So he became a psychologist, got a PhD at Berkeley in clinical psychology, and has spent his whole life as a forensic psychologist in the San Francisco County Jail. And essentially he says on record, my job is to raise the dignity of prisoners, because the prisoner role is one that suppresses humanity, and to limit the sadism of the guards, because the guard role is all about power. And so, if nothing else from the study, here's something positive. The other thing I should say is Kyle plays the role of Craig Haney. Craig Haney was a psychologist. He was so affected by the study, he got a law degree from Stanford, and he is now the leading prison litigation lawyer. He helped win a Supreme Court case against cruel and unusual punishment in solitary confinement and overcrowding. And so, in fact, he was one of the people who helped persuade President Obama to visit a prison recently. For the first time in history, no American president has ever visited a prison. And Obama is clearly going to have promote prison reform. And we hope to get a White House showing of the movie.
You right there, sir.
I would like to know why you left out the fact that this experiment was funded by the Office of Naval Research. This is not just a lone man who took this a little too far. The results of this experiment were used in Abu Ghraib.
Yep.
And I would encourage people to look further than just CNN for your news, because stuff like this, the Milgram experiment,
Yeah. Here, let me speak a little bit to what you're saying about why we didn't.
Enough.
We're here
Make your point.
We're here to answer questions. I'll ask them. Actually, I do think it's really fascinating that it was financed by a branch of the military. It was a really, there was so much to cram into one film, and originally the script started with sort of a series of showing the approvals of the experiment and all these things, and you have to edit down. It's a frustrating. It was actually like the things that were. I cut the film myself, and so normally my cuts on all my films have always come within 5 to 10 minutes of the runtime. You pare it down. So this film came in at 3 hours, and I was like, oh god. So and it's not like an extra hour. Usually when directors like, oh, the director's cut was 4 hours. It's bullshit. It's like 2 terrible hours of stuff that's good that been done. This was like 3 really strong hours, and it was a really, really hard thing. And so lots of details got lost along the way. And actually, I was quite determined to not put in the words Abu Ghraib in the film, because yes, actually Dr. Zimbardo was an expert witness at the Abu Ghraib trials, but I felt that the relation of the film to modern day would speak for itself. Actually, to the point where one critic slammed the movie for using the Abu Ghraib imagery too on the nose, not realizing that they actually did get bags put over their heads during the Stanford prison experiment. These things, people thinking that we embellished or made all this stuff up. So part of, I thought, the trick of making the film was what I experienced when I read the script, which was, oh, they must have made all this up. When I read the script, because I was sort of familiar with the experiment, but not that much, and so I wanted to make a film that could hold up to research. If you go and read the Wikipedia page right now, you'll see that we really, any embellishments we took were quite careful, and all the edits we took were painstaking.
Okay, we have time for one more. How about you right there, man?
Hi, I was wondering if any of the other actors had a chance to talk to the people they were portraying.
So the quick question was, she wants to know if any of the other actors had a chance to talk to any of the other people they were portraying.
No, I don't want to answer for you guys, but no, there was a deliberate effort. There wasn't. Dr. Zimbardo and Christina were part of the film, and there was a choice on my end, which was as I said, paring things down, it became clear that the guys in the prisons were going to be characters based on the actions they took while in that prison, but that we weren't going to be representing their real selves, right? We don't see their families, we don't see their backstories, I wasn't going to cast people that looked exactly like the people that were there. So actually I felt that there would be a sense of a lack of responsibility in a weird way, because remember when Tim wrote the script, Dr. Zimbardo was writing the Lucifer Effect at the same time. So they were including a lot of the research, so it would have worked against it because I wasn't trying to recreate each of those people in there, and that's why we didn't use their names either, because we're not trying to. I met someone recently who was the sister of one of the guards, and I was like, I couldn't even tell you who was playing him in the movie because no one was really playing him. We were taking, taking liberties and using their actions in order to try to tighten it up into a few hours.
Well, before we go, it turns out, Kyle, there's one other actor who's in the audience, I believe.
Oh, somebody.
The actor played the priest.
Oh, are you? Sorry, that was a horribly loud sound. Oh, he's back there. Let's point it out there.
First of all, thank you all so much for seeing the movie, and please spread the word about the film. And please thank the cast and crew of Stanford.